Hi there. On Thursday, Amazon's retail website locked shoppers out of the checkout for 6 hours. Not a DDoS attack, not a server fire in Northern Virginia. An AI agent followed advice from an outdated internal wiki, and the system that serves roughly 310 million active customers went dark in the middle of the afternoon. The same week, Jensen Huang stood on a stage and told the world not to ask for ROI on AI. Let 1,000 flowers bloom, he said, borrowing Mao's most famous invitation to chaos. I want to propose a different metaphor. Not 1,000 flowers, one bloom. Specific, singular, already planted, already paid for, and in Amazon's case, already ripped out of the ground to make room for the machine that just failed. According to the Financial Times, an internal document prepared for Amazon's emergency review identified Gen AI assisted changes as a contributing factor in a pattern of incidents stretching back to Q3 2025. 4 high severity failures hit the retail site in one single week. The internal document was then edited, the AI reference deleted before the meeting took place. Amazon's public response was revealing in what it conceded while trying to minimize. The company said only one incident involving AI tools, and that the cause was an engineer following inaccurate advice that an agent inferred from an outdated internal wiki. Read that sentence again. An agent inferred advice from an outdated wiki. Someone used to keep that wiki current. Someone used to know from years of working with the system which pages were stale and which were gospel. Someone used to be the institutional memory that prevented a new engineer from following a 3-year-old procedure on a live production environment. That someone was already paid for, and Amazon cut her. Amazon laid off roughly 14,000 corporate workers in October of 2025, mostly middle managers, the people who carry institutional knowledge in their heads the way a root system carries water. Another 16,000 followed in January. That's on top of the 27,000 cut between 2022 and 2023. CEO Andy Jassy wrote in an internal memo that the company would need fewer employees thanks to AI-driven efficiency gains. When the October cuts came, he reframed the rationale as culture. The company had grown too fast, needed to be lean. That's that word again, lean. The word manufacturing has been hiding behind for 30 years when it means we cut the people and keep the machines. But a separate Amazon memo announcing the same layoffs cited the need to adapt to transformative technology. The real reason. The reason they always walk back. The reason that now has a 6-hour checkout outage attached to it. Here's the pattern. Fire the people who know things, replace them with systems that don't, then act surprised when the systems infer from an outdated wiki because nobody's left to update it. It is not an AI failure. It is a bloom failure. Amazon ripped the living intelligence out of its own soil and expected artificial intelligence to photosynthesize in the dark. People will read this essay, look at me, and wonder what a manufacturing guy knows about AI deployment at $1 trillion tech company. Fair question. Here's my answer. The pattern is identical. I have watched it play out not in server rooms, but on assembly lines. And the economics of the failure are just as damning when you actually do the math. So, during my Walden Pond years, 2 years on the third shift at GM's Lansing Delta Township plant, launching 3 SUVs simultaneously, I witnessed the spare tire robot. The context. Every year, a plant manager mandates productivity improvements. The chain of command must go find a certain number of heads to remove from the line. Sometimes it's a redistribution of work, taking waste out of movement. Sometimes it's more blunt. We're bringing in a robot. Here's the number of people we no longer need. You can imagine that in a traditional GM UAW setting with entrenched positions, the floor has zero interest in cooperating. And the shift leaders, guys like me, have every incentive to force it through because our stock rises or falls on whether we deliver those numbers. The business case looked clean. In the chassis area, downstream from my trim shop, a member on each shift would take a spare tire, lift it with an assist device, and place it in the rear compartment. The proposal? Install a robot to do the job. Eliminate one person per shift, roughly $120,000 all in with benefits, times 3 shifts. So that's $360,000 a year in savings. Total cost of the robot, programming, enclosure fabrication, MES integration, installation, roughly $2 million. Payback, 5 to 6 years. Then you never have to hire those positions again. Sweet business case. Now here's what the business case did not include. For the first 3 or 4 months, the chassis area suffered constant downtime, programming bugs, MES integration failures. The robot would crash, the line would stop, and the entire plant, trim, chassis, maybe 400 people, would stand and wait. My trim shop would finish its work, fill every buffer, and then block against chassis with nothing to do. Hours and hours of it in the middle of an extremely aggressive new product launch. And here's the part nobody modeled. The floor offered no help. Not because they were lazy, not because they were not intelligent, because their interests were perfectly misaligned. The robot was there to eliminate their colleagues. The skilled trades didn't have knowledge of the new system, so the only people debugging it were the systems integrator and the robot installer, specialists who understood the machine but knew nothing about the application domain, going through failure mode after failure mode after failure mode with no deployed intelligence from the people who actually knew the process and probably did it for the last 15 years. Then came the secondary failures, the ones no business case ever captures. In the old process, I would load a plastic trim panel at the end of my trim shop and let it ride through the chassis area until it was needed for installation. Various team members along the way would reposition it depending on what they were doing in the rear compartment. At least once a night, a panel would end up in the wrong spot. The spare tire robot would come in, crush into it, crash, need to be homed, reprogrammed, restarted. 5 to 10 minutes every occurrence. This became a nightly blame game. Chassis would say, "Trim, you shut us down." We'd spend the rest of the shift arguing whether they were using us more like a bogeyman to hide their problems. So now do the real math. This was a give or take 60 jobs per hour plant, one car every minute. Every minute we didn't build a car, mind you, in this case, extremely critical launch cars needed to fill the pipeline to dealerships. Every minute we didn't build a car, we lost roughly $55,000 in revenue and perhaps $10,000 in profit, give or take. That means every hour of downtime cost $600,000 in lost profit. Nearly 2 full years of labor savings a robot was supposed to deliver. If somebody had done an honest forensic accounting of the cumulative downtime during that robot's installation, say 80 hours over those first months, which is conservative, you're looking at 48 million in lost profit against a robot that cost 2 million and saved $360,000 a year. The downtime losses alone were 24 times the cost of the robot. That 5 to 6 year payback the business case promised, it will never pay back. And I'm not exaggerating for effect. I'm describing what happens when you remove the bloom and then try to recalculate the cost. The question nobody asked was the one that mattered. Remember, we're trying to save $360,000 a year. Could that economic improvement we sought with the robot have been accomplished by deploying the intelligence of the people already on the floor? If their interests were aligned with the company's interest, maybe a line rebalance, maybe a process kaizen, a genuine alignment of the interests of the folks on the floor with the interests of the company. The answer, and I can attest to it because I knew these people by first name, by the names of their grandchildren. The answer almost certainly was yes. But that path required trusting the bloom. And the institution had no framework for that. And I will say this is exactly what happened at Amazon. Swap the spare tire robot for a Gen AI agent. Swap the outdated wiki for a 3-year-old procedure nobody maintained. Swap the skilled trades who wouldn't help because the interests were misaligned for the middle managers who weren't there because they'd been laid off. The topology is identical. The only difference is that Amazon's failure happened to 310 million customers instead of 400 workers on a night shift in Lansing. I've spent 36 years on factory floors across 3 continents: General Motors, Chrysler, Mercedes-Benz, Royal Enfield, now Advanced Drainage Systems, and I've come to see a pattern so consistent it functions as a law. Every organization sits on intelligence it has already bought and is actively suppressing, actively extracting. The frontline worker who knows that line 3 pulls left on humid days. The maintenance tech who can hear a bearing going bad 2 shifts before the vibration sensor catches it. The middle manager who remembers why we stopped using that vendor's API in 2019. This intelligence is not mysterious. It's not hiding. It is standing right there on the floor every shift, drawing a paycheck, already hired, already trained, already paid for. I call the system that protects and deploys this intelligence the bloom. Not a metaphor, as mechanism. A bloom happens when a bud is protected long enough to open. The lotus my tradition's signature flower grows in mud, rises through murky water, and opens immaculate on the surface. The mud is not the obstacle, it is the nutrient. The factory floor is the mud. The worker's tacit knowledge is the bud. And the three conditions that allow that bud to open are exactly what you'd expect. Soil, the company's provision of what labor actually needs: time, love, health, and wealth, the nutrient base without which nothing roots. Second, it needs water, the systemic pathway from task holder to capability builder, where people are measured on capability capital and paid based on what they learn and contribute as they rise. And finally, sun, which is training and development in high pressure, high heat context, the intense light that forces the bud to open into deployed intelligence. Remove anyone and the bud rots before it blooms. Beneath these protective structures lies what I call the twin helix, the intertwined strands of capital's goals, which are earnings, growth, innovation, and brand equity, and labor's goals, which is time, love, health, and wealth. Like DNA, the two strands are not opposing forces. They are complementary codes that, when read together, produce something neither creates alone. Every failed automation story I have ever witnessed, and I have witnessed many, come down to the same error. Someone pulled one strand out of the helix and expected the other to replicate on its own. Amazon just demonstrated that error at scale in public to 310 million customers. The spare tire robot demonstrated it at a smaller scale, in private, on a night shift, in Michigan. The error is the same. So on the same day Amazon was scrambling to explain why its AI broke the website, Jensen Huang was telling an audience that the path forward was to invest in AI without asking what it returns. Let 1,000 flowers bloom, he said. It's a revealing choice of phrase. Mao's original 100 Flowers campaign was an invitation for intellectuals to speak freely, followed by a purge of everyone who did. The 1,000 Flowers rhetoric sounds like abundance. It's actually the language of expendability. Plant so many that it doesn't matter which ones die. That is the opposite of what a bloom requires. A bloom is not scatter and pray. A bloom is specific. It is one bud in one place, protected by structures that were built to help it open. It requires patience, sequence, and the recognition that the intelligence you need is already there. You just have to stop cutting it back. Huang says, don't ask for ROI. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. I say, you already have one, but you're killing it. Amazon is not alone in this. A new analysis of 164,000 workers by ActiveTrack, reported in the Wall Street Journal, found that AI adoption is increasing the speed, density, and complexity of work rather than reducing it. Time spent on email, messaging, and chat tools more than doubled. Time spent on focused, uninterrupted work, what we call flow, the kind required for solving complex problems, the kind that produces blooms, fell 9%. Meanwhile, Anthropic's own research suggests the gap between what AI can theoretically automate and what is actually automating is enormous. Even in software and math, the domains where AI is strongest, 94% of tasks could theoretically be handled by AI. But only 33% are being automated today. The gap is not technological, it is institutional. The systems, the knowledge, the human judgment required to deploy AI safely, all of that is Bloom dependent. It requires the very people companies are cutting. Jack Dorsey's block cut 4,000 workers last month, half his workforce, and tied the decision explicitly to AI. Salesforce's Benioff cut 4,000 support roles. The C-suite consensus is that AI investment pays for itself through smaller workforces. But the Amazon outage is the first major public crack in that consensus. The system broke not because the AI is bad, but because the humans who would have prevented the failure were gone. The wiki was outdated because the person who updated it had been optimized away. You cannot lean your way to intelligence. You can only bloom your way there. So if you run a factory, a hospital, a logistics operation, a software team, any system where institutional knowledge matter, here is what Amazon just taught you for free. The intelligence you need is not in the model. It is in the people who know which wiki pages are stale, which procedures have silent exceptions, which machines sound different on Tuesdays. That knowledge cannot be scraped, tokenized, or embedded. It was formed over years of hands-on engagement with a specific system in a specific place. It is, in every meaningful sense, already paid for. And the ROI case for replacing it? Ask the people who built the spare tire robot whether 3 to 5 year payback held up when they finally counted the real costs. Ask Amazon whether the savings from 30,000 layoffs held up when the AI inferred from an outdated wiki and the store went dark for 6 hours. The Bloom system asks one diagnostic question. Is your organization blooming or just surviving? Amazon this week gave us the answer to that question at the largest possible scale. They pulled the bloom out by the roots. And then the AI, left alone in the dirt, inferred from an outdated wiki and broke the store.